John Jackson Benson was born on Alabama's Collegia Creek beaches in September 1850. James Benson, who owned the slaves, managed a plantation close to Collegia Creek in Alabama. His mother was a slave. In return, so was John and his sister. His sister was sold as a slave to a plantation in Florida. In 1865, the Confiscation Act of 1861 was passed, due to which slaves were freed and they were given lands that were confiscated from the rebels. John was freed and he acquired a mule soon after. The first thing John had on his mind was to find his sister. He went from Alabama to Florida to look for his sister. Doing such a reckless thing while the Civil War was ending was a death sentence. But John vowed that he wouldn't go home until he found his sister. After searching for his sister for an entire summer, John finally found her. With the intention of starting over, he and his sister went back home to Alabama, where they had their own plantation. By 1890, he acquired even a larger piece of land from his slave owner's estate as his own. And by 1898, he owned more than 3,000 acres of land. Once a slave in that land, John was now a rich and powerful man with an insane amount of wealth, with a son to carry on his legacy. This town started being known as the town of Benson, because John and his son William Benson were the foremost members of that town. They were helping their community progress at an amazing pace, but soon the Martin Dam created by the Alabama Power Company created heavy flooding, drowning the town of Benson and surrounding areas, devouring it as a whole. Who knows how far the Bensons would have carried their town if they were given enough time. Lake Martin is also the largest man-made lake in the whole world. It drowned many other surrounding towns as well. These surrounding towns include: when Logan Martin Lake was constructed in 1964, Easonville drowned. The St. Clair County community was close to Cropwell and Pell City. Lake Martin also caused flooding in Susanna, also known as Susanna. Before the area was inundated, over 900 bodies were reportedly removed from cemeteries, according to a report in the Montgomery Advertiser. A gold mine, a school, 2 mercantiles, a sawmill, a mill for flour, a grist mill, a blacksmith shop, and a church were formerly located in the town. The small community of Riverton in Colbert County was submerged in 1938 as a result of the construction of Pickwick Dam on the Tennessee River. As a result of the town's strategic location on the Tennessee River, there were numerous bombardments there during the Civil War. Above the floodlands is the historic Riverton Cemetery, where a few town inhabitants are interred. Irma, in Elmore County, is now found below Lake Martin. A church that is marked on maps was drowned in a particularly deep area of the lake, as reported by a blog for scuba divers. As a result of the shipbuilding boom that the 1940s brought about, Vanport rose to become the second biggest municipality in the state. However, as white men were conscripted to fight overseas during World War II, a labor need drove a large influx of blacks across the southern region. Oregon experienced labor scarcity as a result of the overseas military drought. As a result, a large number of black Americans left the South. Since the Albina neighborhood was the sole location where black people might legitimately live, these new laborers required places to live. It grew too tiny to accommodate the increasing number of black Americans. Thus, Vanport was constructed as a temporary accommodation solution. At its height, 40,000 people, or 40% of the population, were African American. In Vanport, life was hectic. The noise was incessant since over 40,000 people were crammed into small, thin-walled structures, some of whom worked during the day and others at night. As both parents worked, quality daycare was essential. Due to the town's proximity to the Columbia floodplain and the sometimes rainy northwest climate, inhabitants frequently had to wade through the muck. But for many, it was a vibrant, varied neighborhood that quickly felt like home. However, in 1948, the area experienced severe flooding, and because city officials failed to alert locals to the extreme high water levels, numerous individuals were unable to leave in time. They were not given any previous warning by the authorities, even though the authorities were well aware of all the consequences of the flooding, which was why most of their population was wiped out by the flood. Within a day, the entire town was destroyed. More than a third of the 18,500 households who were uprooted were Black Americans. Rumors circulated in the neighborhood press in the days surrounding the Vanport flood. Eyewitness testimonies describe seeing dozens of dead being taken down by the Columbia River, while officials' estimates of mortality were in the hundreds. These estimates were freely given to the media by people who were not directly involved in the inquiry. No bodies had been found in the waterlogged town days into June, which fueled rumors that the HAP had secretly disposed of them to diminish the responsibility for its poor management of the disaster. In one news report, it was stated that the HAP had made arrangements for at least 600 bodies to be kept in the terminal ice and cold storage facility in the city. In another, it was asserted that the government had covertly put 157 bodies aboard a ship heading to Japan. Today, that place is known as Delta Park. Georgia's largest lake, Lake Lanier, is home to a city that is submerged, and with it, a secret. An American horror tale replete with fear, death, massacre, and spirits. You've probably heard stories about Lake Lanier if you spend any time near or within Atlanta. There have been unsettling reports of ladies with no hands strolling the Jerry D. Jackson Bridge, or fishermen sighting phantom kayaks floating on the lake. Every now and again, someone drowns at the lake, leaving behind tales of exemplary swimmers captured under the water, mysterious boating mishaps, or unprovoked car crashes into the waters. If you ask many locals, they would advise you bluntly, don't go to Lake Lanier. And its fatal toll definitely supports that claim. Since the lake's creation, there have been more than 500 fatalities, and since 1994, there have been over 200 fatalities. You decide whether or not the lake is haunted. But one thing is certain, understanding its eerie present requires a perspective that comes from understanding its horrible past. Ernest Knox and Oscar Daniel were hanged for sexually assaulting May Crow, leading to the spread of terror among white terrorists known as Night Riders. The town of Oscarville became one of its main targets, with 98% of its black residents either leaving their homes or being murdered for refusing to move. Black property deeds were sold to white neighbors, allowing them to steal land once owned by their black counterparts. Over 1,100 blacks lost their livelihood, and the once functioning African-American town of Oscarville became a ghost town. By 1950, a plan to build Lake Lanier was in full effect, destroying over 50,000 acres of farmland, displacing over 250 families, and relocating 20 cemeteries, possibly to erase the sins of its past. Black communities have been tolerating injustice, unsolicited murders, and brutality for just being born of color. Their inhuman treatment since the dawn of time is the very proof that these people deserve justice and equality. If you support equality for black people, drop a like and subscribe to our channel. Write your thoughts on this dark history of white communities and their barbaric behavior towards black people. Thanks for watching. See you again soon in another video.